The fate of humanity now hangs on the outcome of an enormous gamble. The race to develop AI is an experiment in social engineering at a planetary scale. No one can deny the dangers, but why has the power to run that experiment been delegated to individuals best known for success at sales? The risks of AI are extraordinary. They're tolerated because of a business strategy that stood the test of time. Pursue reward by building systems that shift onto others the cost of things going wrong. Now, with so many lives and livelihoods at stake, humanity's future is in the hands of business titans who relish the thrill of big, risky bets. Few are better positioned to anticipate the profound impact of AI acceleration, and few are better positioned to insulate themselves from its catastrophic downsides. But the science of risk aversion predates AI by centuries. Its applications and refinements shaped the world from which AI emerged. To understand the path down which the powers that be have sent us, let's retrace some steps. The sailors of ancient Greece had lots of names for the hazards beneath their hulls. In one sense, the reefs and underwater cliffs they feared were the unseen roots of mountains. The rocks were dangerous, but often rich with bounty. They signaled both harm and reward, prompting fear and attraction. The word they used for root was riza. As it passed among seafaring cultures, the way it sounded shifted. But that twin sense of danger and opportunity carried on for centuries. In Venice, by the 1200s, the word took on an explicit legal meaning. Speculators used it to get around rules set by the Catholic Church against usury. The speculators also had to contend with an old cultural aversion against accruing interest. Orthodoxy held that only living beings such as plants, animals, and people could spawn offspring. Money could not. So any lending which earned interest was deemed a subversive cosmic evil. It violated the Church's claim to be the uniquely legitimate custodian of God's sacred time. To game the ban, investors embraced a new form of contractual partnership called a colleganza. This boon to maritime trade, also called the commenda, formalized risk as a contractual mechanism. It paired obligations to accept loss with rules for sharing possible fortune. Church restrictions couldn't block the contract because it defined a partnership, not a loan. Rather than conjuring abominations out of barren money, partners earned profits through genuine exposure to physical danger. The innovation spread across Europe, sparking a thriving marine insurance business, the acceleration of speculative investment across the region, and a new era of trade. The mechanism became a lever for a pivotal cultural shift. Entrepreneurs had gained the freedom to deploy resources across new horizons of space and time. The future was no longer deferred to the will of God. It could be taken into one's own hands and treated as a probability distribution to be modeled, priced, and traded. But investors still had no formal language for calculating shares of anticipated profits or losses. The technology for systematizing risk didn't arrive for centuries. Breakthroughs came with the scientific revolution, which vastly extended humanity's powers of observation. A surge of empiricism and experimentation radically freed up human inquiry. Now it could range over phenomenal distances and deep within nature. Glass was forged into lenses to trace the movement of heavenly bodies. Mathematics supplied a heuristic lens that made those movements intelligible. Once in place, tools such as abstraction, quantification, and prediction had utility far beyond astronomy. They were vital for the work of Blaise Pascal, a mathematician who became a hero of the scientific revolution by developing formulas that demonstrated the fluid statics underlying the hydraulic press, the barometer, and the syringe. Among Pascal's many accomplishments, two concern the role of probability in determining payoffs to gamblers. Pascal's wager is the best known of these, but that's due more to theological impact than mathematical utility. Pascal was a member of the Jansenists, a heretical Catholic sect. Like Calvinists, they rejected free will in favor of predestination. They presumed humanity was enslaved by its animal nature to a miserable life of sinful urges. Pascal attributed those habitual proclivities to what he called the machine aspect of our being. From that perspective, the only escape from sin is true faith, granted as a divine gift rather than achieved through one's own will and works. Only those selected through God's grace could reach heaven. Simply deciding to act faithfully wouldn't be enough. But Pascal's intensely mystical approach to religiosity was far out of step with his colleagues in the scientific community. It came at a time following Galileo's persecution by the church, when skepticism about ecclesiastical dogma was on the rise. This new atmosphere was liberating for European intellectuals. Some even felt emboldened to question the prospects for a heavenly afterlife promised by an unproven God. Pascal had an argument for them. Pascal actually agreed with the skeptics who were saying that God's existence couldn't be proven. He firmly and openly rejected Descartes' claim to have done so. But despite this, Pascal also said that non-believers had a pragmatic reason to act like believers. He mapped it out. With no guarantee that the human machine could ever tame itself by itself, Pascal granted that the pretense of earthly piety might never pay off. Yet, by his math, it was worth a try anyway. The mere chance of winning infinite bliss far outweighs the finite cost of playing along. Plus, playing along might work as a hedge against the threat of eternal torture. With those options, the decision not to believe would be less rational. That was the famous wager. For a skeptic, the best bet is to fake it because that's the only hope to make it. Pascal's other work on gambling was far more consequential. It stemmed from an exchange of letters between Pascal and another superstar mathematician, Pierre Fermat. They had taken up a riddle posed by a French nobleman who was worried about being cheated when dividing the pot from an unfinished game of dice. This challenge was known as the problem of points. Using different methods, both reached accepted answers, but the details of how they did it were kept hidden for years. When news of the mysterious solutions got out, the Dutch scientist Christian Huygens decided to make his own attempt. His approach to the riddle turned out to be revolutionary. Huygens factored out the key concerns of wagering into generalized abstractions. That distillation yielded an equation for the price of a bet. He boiled it down to the value of winning multiplied by the probability of winning. The formal term is expected value. As a devout empiricist who identified with the natural theology movement of the era, Huygens was no fan of Pascal's mysticism, but he put aside the theology of the wager, raising an observation that still stands as a powerful objection. Pascal's wager fails to meet the mathematical standard of a fair game because the promise of an infinite payoff can't be computed in any useful way. The fair price for playing does not resolve to a finite number. Any decision that hinges on calculating probability requires a solution that yields a well-defined result. More importantly for the natural history of risk, Huygens reframed the problem of points by refactoring the operation of time. Now it would determine expected value prior to placing a bet, rather than just claimable value after the dice have rolled. The result was a formula that had much broader utility than idle games of chance. Technically, it calculates the expected value of a wager. Practically, it puts a price tag on the future. This became the bedrock concept for pricing insurance risk. That formula intrigued the leader of Holland, Johan de Witt, who was a trained mathematician. After running the numbers, he realized that his government had been grossly undercharging for the interest-bearing annuities being sold to raise funds during a war with France. Unfortunately for de Witt, the new rates turned off buyers who had become habituated to huge bargains. His fiscal reform failed, triggering a cascade of political disasters. Second and third order effects culminated in a military collapse and the eventual lynching of de Witt and his brother by an angry mob. Johan de Witt's unhappy end revealed a blind spot in that first effort to mathematize risk. About 80 years later, Daniel Bernoulli explained what Huygens had overlooked. Huygens had focused on the objective value of a wager in the game. Bernoulli focused on the subjective value of the wager to the player. How much does the outcome promise to improve one's life? A betting method focused exclusively on size and likelihood of payoff misses something crucial about a bet's attraction. Decisions with uncertain outcomes yield measurable gains and losses in satisfaction. That's the utility function. It inevitably differs among people who start from different means. As proximity to ruin varies, people calculate accordingly. A boon for a pauper is pocket change for a billionaire. There's a formula for it. That answer is why Bernoulli is called the patron saint of risk aversion. It also added the concept of marginal utility to economics. His brand endures. With Bernoulli's insight, the calculation of risk rose to the level of a fully fledged mathematical language. His concept explained why people pay extra to avoid ruin, and also why they can be coaxed into risking everything on high payoff bets. Bernoulli had solved a long-standing riddle in the maritime insurance market. Merchants typically paid higher premiums than the probability-weighted loss calculated under expected value reasoning, sometimes far higher. That extra dose of prudence could seem superstitious until Bernoulli's utility lens legitimized its logic. People already understood that one underwriter's tolerable loss could be a ship owner's backbreaking last straw. Once the intuition could be expressed with mathematical formality, the insurance industry acquired new intellectual standing. As it turned out, the formula was also an antidote to Pascal's unscalable offer. Pascal's wager boiled down to an existential coin toss where the stakes are ruin or salvation. As initially postulated, just one move decides the result, pitting a singular chance to win massive benefits against the final cost of playing the game. But real life isn't a single move, it's a sequence of many. A mathematical thought problem called the St. Petersburg paradox puts this in perspective. It shows how infinite expected value can look compelling on paper, yet why people who lack infinite wealth and tolerance for loss won't buy it. What Bernoulli realized is that players adjust their behavior as losses stack up. Each new round raises the threat of ruin. The first few may feel affordable, but over time, catastrophe looms larger. Continuing becomes irrational, and sensible players quit. Likewise, sensible investors demand a risk premium when failure can wipe them out. Unfortunately, the new science of risk came with notorious downsides. Financial predators weaponized it to exploit the mathematically illiterate. Reckless speculators helped fuel catastrophic backfires such as stock market bubbles and huge business busts. But to give Pascal his due, he made a point Bernoulli couldn't deny. When facing desperate pressure to accept horrible odds, and a single immediate choice must be made, the leap might still be worth it. Fear of loss is a powerful driver of human behavior. By the same token, the lure of infinite gain is nearly impossible for most people to ignore. Fear of missing out often takes the wheel. Endless fortune beckons as much in real life as Pascal says it does in heaven. That helps explain our current predicament with artificial intelligence. It's a recurring dilemma in history. Just as advocates of nuclear power in the 1950s promised that electricity would become too cheap to meter, the avatars of AGI in the 2020s are pitching a world of effortless abundance. We humans are easily baited, and salespeople are trained to exploit us systematically. Mathematicians of the pre-industrial era made real progress at rationalizing risk. For better or worse, Huygens, Bernoulli, and those who followed made it possible to steer the world by abstracted calculation rather than situated judgment. But each step forward led to slippery ground and no way back. By now, the pattern is clear. Once risk could be priced, optimized, and automated, it could also be delegated. What began as a human tool for reasoning about uncertainty became an operational rule for deciding action at scale. The legacy of mathematized risk is a world saturated with automated decision systems. By design, they operate faster than humans can keep up. Our capacity for bringing catastrophe upon ourselves has expanded accordingly. Global existential risk is no longer a mythological prospect. It's an engineered one. Even perfect math can destroy you when the objective is misaligned. The algorithm giveth, and the algorithm taketh away. The human eye is nice to have despite its tiny blind spot. Digital news is also nice to have, but it's cratered with blind spots, many of them. Do you know about yours? Ground News can help. Lots of Republicans saw this important story about a bribery scheme. Most Democrats didn't. No surprise, lack of insight goes both ways. The bubbles flip for this important story about election fraud. Know your blind spots. Ground News won't hide them from you. Ground News is not a sponsor of this content. This free testimonial was provided by a happy customer. You're watching Silicon Chernobyl and Other Risks of the Noosphere. two-party system got you down? Do you want more from your democracy? When you show up to vote, are you doing it out of enthusiasm for your side or out of desperate opposition to the other? The two-party system won't fix itself, but the Indaba application network has an alternative. IAN is a collaborative venue where teams can build planks and platforms for new political parties. Sign up for the beta invitation at indaba.org. But wait, there's more. Interested in learning about the Noosphere? Check out the playlist at miniherald.com, a showcase member of the Indaba application network.